Galaxy Universal Network, inspiring Africa, making global impact. Galaxy Universal Network, inspiring Africa, making global impact.
While millions are called to down tools and stay away, the Finance Minister Mboweni was the main man, a whole Mureki, as he gave this year's budget speech. All this and more as Galaxy Prime starts now.
Galaxy Universal Network, inspiring Africa, making global impact.
Yet another installment of Galaxy Prime right here on Galaxy Universal Network, channel 500 on StarSat. Thank you so much for joining us and to further the conversation across all our social media platforms. We are Galaxy Universal Network on Facebook. We are GAN_TV_ on Instagram and on Twitter. As the Minister of Finance, Mboweni, was delivering the budget speech, that was the talk of the day. The Finance Minister, Mboweni, today delivered the budget speech for 2021 financial year. Furthermore, he experienced opposition from parties like One SA. We cannot be roasted more and more with taxes. We cannot afford extra garlic. Roast the ANC. It is clear that the contract between the South African government and the South African citizens is broken. And those were sentiments shared by the leader of One South Africa, Mmusi Maimane, prior to the budget speech.
Molweni, sanbonani, good day. On the 24th of February, the Minister of Finance will table his budget speech for this year. It's become quite clear that South Africa's contract between us, the citizens, and the government is broken. All of us are sitting at home wondering how we can stretch the little bit of money that we've got further. We are even worried as we watch the news and see that more and more acts of corruption are taking place. We've lived through a number of years upon which it felt like we care about our money, but the government simply doesn't, by allowing corrupt deals to go through. And so when this budget is tabled, there's no question that we're already paying more on debt, but there's no question about the fact that money is going to be tough. The easiest thing for governments to do is to increase taxes, to increase VAT, to increase fuel taxes, and other forms of taxation that they can impose on our people. I reject those. I reject and actually state categorically that you cannot punish the citizens for this government's own corruption and mismanagement. We are going to petition the government. I am asking you to sign our petition. The link is right now in front of you. You can click on there, sign the petition. We want to get back to government to tell them no to tax increases. The contract between us, the people, and the government is broken. We cannot simply allow a government that wants to continue to spend money fruitlessly and asking us, the people, to pay in what is a tough situation. Say no to tax increases, sign the petition, and we'll take it to Parliament on behalf of the people to say no to any further tax increase. Stand with us and sign the petition. Enkosi, ndiyabulela.
The personal tax income bracket will increase by 5%, which is more than inflation. This will provide 2.2 billion rand in tax relief. Most of the relief will reduce the tax burden on the lower and the middle income. We have agreed that tax increases must be kept at a minimum, said Minister of Finance Mboweni.
The main budget revenue is projected to be 1.35 trillion rand, or 25.3% as a share of gross domestic product in 2021. This rises to 1.52 trillion rand in the outer year being 2023-24 of the medium-term expenditure framework. when we were writing these numbers, Mr. President, 1.52 trillion, I was tempted to ask one member of the House how many zeros are in a trillion, but I thought not to do that. At the same time, non-interest spending will remain steady at approximately 1.56 trillion rand over the next 3 years, but will decline as a share of GDP from 29.2% in 2021-22 to 26.2% of GDP in 23-24. I requested tips from the public to help in crafting this budget. Many tips spoke about the limits to increased taxation. Others spoke about the need to cut the number of cabinet ministers, and I told them that was above my pay cut. It's above my pay level. That's not mine. We agree that tax increases must be kept to a minimum. And therefore, General Approval, there's no need for a tax revolt. We have chosen not to introduce the 40 billion rand.
We have allocated more than 10 billion rands for the purchase and the delivery of vaccines over the next 2 years.
With this framework, we provide the budget for South Africa's vaccination campaign. This campaign allows us to emerge from the restrictions that we have experienced to economic activity. So the restrictions were meant to help us fight against COVID. And now, as we gradually fight this, introducing vaccines, we should be able to return in time to full economic activity. We are allocating more than 10 billion rand for the purchase and delivery of vaccines over the next 2 years.
Mboweni said the government has committed to a 791.2 billion rands infrastructure investment to drive this end.
To becoming a winning country. Since then, we have mourned the passing of nearly 50,000 of our fellow South Africans as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The damage visited upon us by COVID-19 runs deep, and we share in the collective pain of many South Africans who have lost their jobs. All of this notwithstanding, Madam Speaker, we are not without hope. Our national icon, the Nobel laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu, reminded us that, and I quote, "Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness," unquote. He observed that sometimes we forget that just beyond the clouds, the sun is shining. The brave and fearless sacrifices of our frontline workers continue to save thousands of lives. We salute all our health care and essential service workers who remain standing at the front line of our struggle.
We have increased the contingency reserves from 5 billion rand to 12 billion rand to make provision for the further purchases of vaccines and cater for other emergencies. The fuel levies will increase by 20 cents per litre, comprising of 15 cents per litre for the general fuel levy and 11 cents per litre for the RAF levy and 1 cent per litre for the carbon fiber levy, for the carbon fuel levy. And today again, the 340 ml can of BIO cider will cost you an extra 14 cents, and a 750 ml bottle of wine will cost you 26 cents extra. Minister Mboweni gave this update.
To becoming a winning country. Since then, we have mourned the passing of nearly 50,000 of our fellow South Africans as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The damage visited upon us, the old age disability care dependency grants are increased to 1,890 rand. The increase for war veterans grant to 1,910 rand. An increase in child support grant goes up to 400.
Furthermore, let's take a look at the grant increase. Old age, disability and care dependency grants have increased to 1,890. The war veteran grants is now at 1,910, and the child support grant is at 460 rand, and the foster care grant is now at 1,050 cents.
The old age, disability, care dependency grants are increased to 1,890 rand. The increase for war veterans grant to 1,910 rand. An increase in child support grant goes up to 460 rand. An increase for foster care grant increases to 1,050 rand. Government remains committed to ensuring that deserving students are supported through higher education. The National Treasury is working closely with the Department of Higher Education and Training to work out on policy and funding options that will be detailed in the medium-term budget policy.
The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development is allocated 1.8 billion to improve business processes. This allocation will support their law enforcement agencies to fight against corruption and crime. The provinces will receive a further 3.5 billion rands from the Department of Social Development to improve and access to early childhood development services.
Provinces will receive 3.5 billion from the Department of Social Development to improve access to early childhood development services. 6.3 billion is allocated to extend the special COVID Social Relief of Distress grant until the end of April 2021. Mr. President, we're responding to your injunction. In addition, 678.3 million is earmarked for provincial departments.
Do stay tuned. Galaxy Prime will take a short break and we'll be back after this.
Anger boils over in El Dorado Park.
Make massive moves.
Corruption allegations have hit too close to the office of the president.
America is crying out for leadership.
I'm the president and you're fake news.
Donald Trump has already started his attacks.
It is clear from the development of the disease.
It is still the biggest annual decline in 100 years.
Make massive moves with StarSat.
Allen has the change.
Make massive moves.
Oh my God! Oh! Knocked out! And WBC Continental America's champion. That was delightful.
Make massive moves with StarSat. Make massive moves.
Picture perfect, you don't need no filter.
Another one. Another one.
Jerusalem,
Make massive moves with StarSat. Make massive moves.
You're the best fighter in China.
Give me the Emperor's sword, and I'll spare your life. Shisha sector's gone too far.
Make massive moves with StarSat. Make massive moves.
Deceiver!
There isn't any time to waste then.
We can't save everyone in this war.
One moment, that's all we got.
You're locked in here with me.
Make massive moves with StarSat.
This is just the beginning.
Make massive moves.
Get out! Get out of this place!
I love you. Do you love me?
Yes.
I like this.
Someone stole from me yesterday.
It was not my fault now. Eh?
Leave me or I blast your head.
No, don't shoot, sir, please.
Please don't kill us. I'll give you anything you want.
Make massive moves with StarSat. Make massive moves.
Bible is human and divine.
It's important for us to remember.
And I'm part of God's story.
Yeah, mama, hey.
God is sealing you.
God says what he means, and he means what he says.
God is good.
I am very grateful to God. I am healed.
Amen.
Make massive moves with StarSat. Make massive moves.
Wow.
Let's go. Come on, we can be back by morning.
Welcome back to Galaxy Prime right here on Galaxy Universal Network Channel 500. My name is GUGU, and thank you so much for joining us. Do further the conversation across all our social media platforms. We are Galaxy Universal Network on Facebook. We are GAN_TV_ on Instagram and on Twitter. Later on the show, we'll be joined by our guest, Mr. Neil de Beer, who will be giving us some insight in analyzing today's budget speech. Just shortly, well, let's take a look at some news before we get to our guest. Ahead of the budget speech of Mr. Tito Mboweni, he had faced a very cold front from the opposition party. The deputy president of the Economic Freedom Fighter, Mr. Floyd Shibambo, shared some sentiments on the expectations of the budget speech. Shibambo said that the state's national treasurer must use its own current regulatory power to locate or rather end local procurement, meaning that the minimum of 80% of the goods and services that the state consumes must be produced in South Africa.
South Africa is defined by a huge crisis of poverty, of unemployment, and of huge inequalities. The crisis of unemployment is even much deeper because during the lockdown period, an additional 2 million South Africans who were working before lost their jobs, meaning that we've got close to 11 million people in South Africa currently that do not have jobs. The most backward thing any minister can ever do under these conditions is to implement austerity measures, which are budget.
Opposition kept on hitting it hard. After the budget speech, the EFF's Mbuyiseni Ndlozi said that there's nothing to celebrate from the budget speech. Let's take a look at those sentiments.
In this budget, essentially, that is going to result in a transformation of the structure of South Africa's economy. What is the structure of South Africa's economy? Chronic unemployment, the fact that we do not, as a country, have industrialization that is happening, even the promises that they will drive government expenditure to stimulate local industrialization and local production. They've been making these promises over the years and have not been materializing. There were fundamental problems that relate to illicit financial flows that the budget said nothing about. I mean, you collect taxes from a very insignificant industry called tobacco. You leave the big mines, the auditing firms. So there's nothing in the budget that is going to lead to the fundamental changes that are required in South Africa's economy. They are trying to go back to a pre-COVID-19 situation, which is totally unattainable. You will never be able to.
With that being said, we are going to move right away to our guest, Mr. Neil de Beer, who's on the line with us to discuss today's budget speech. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Neil. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Neil de Beer.
Welcome to you, Mr. Neil de Beer. It's a great privilege and an honor to be back with you, GUGU, and your viewers. Always great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's take a look at today's budget speech that was delivered by the Finance Minister, Minister Tito Mboweni. What's your sentiments with this, considering that our country at this point is under difficult circumstances economically because of the pandemic?
I want to make it very clear in my pre-update speech today on social media that in no way does the UIM, myself, and the normal citizen of this country believe for 1 minute that COVID was the due collapse of the economy of this country. We agree that COVID played a role in exacerbating a bitter, sad economy, but I am stating it very clear that the collapse of the South African economy happened much earlier than COVID ever hit this country. So by the minister trying to blame an absolute mismanagement of funding, the stealing and looting of treasury, as indicated by various commissions now like Zondo, it's happened far prior to Corona hitting. And I asked Tito Mboweni this morning, does Corona also give you a cause and effect of stealing? If so, we've got the wrong vaccine.
With that being said, Mr. Neil, as a movement, what would you have done differently with the conditions, given the circumstances?
Well, plain and simply, we wouldn't have stolen probably 1 billion, 2 trillion. That's the first thing. The United Independent would not allow the looting of treasury. Number two, the current foreign-based debt, GUGU, in this country has gone over the aspect of $3 trillion. Not in my lifetime, and I hesitate, even currently in my great young colleague here joining us, not even in his lifetime do I believe that we will settle this debt. And thirdly, what happened to stimulus packages where this government agreed that it would, without a doubt, start buying and spending internally by backing SMMEs and buying SA first? That would have changed dramatically the economy of this country.
Now, looking at one of the propositions that were made by the finance minister, and that the taxes would be kept at a minimal. What's your take on the income tax being kept at a minimal?
I think the reprieve currently of income tax, he didn't have a choice, because if you look at it in the state, out of 40, 50 million people, how many people in actual fact pay income tax? Surprised currently, and I don't have the stats, but I will be surprised if 10% of this country pays income tax. So our is he didn't give us a benefit at all by saying he won't touch income tax. I'll tell you why in the Afrikaans word. The government of this country is making the citizen gatvol. Anyway, because we are currently just charging people who are paying tax, and we are not wanting to pay tax anymore. There's coming a tax revolt in this country, and I'm telling you now, if that happens, we are even in a bigger crisis than what we are right now.
Let me come to you, Mr. Chidi M. Thank you so much for joining us as well tonight. What's your take on today's budget speech that was delivered by the Minister of Finance, Minister Tito Mboweni?
Thank you very much. Greetings to your guests and your viewers on Galaxy Universal Network. Firstly, as the African Students Union, our statement on the budget speech by the Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, is that it's very clear that he is in no way working to appease the grievances of the South African people. This budget speech was speaking more to the neoliberal investors and the hegemonic dynasty of white monopoly capital who still control the economy and control the space where black people are supposed to work. The budget speech was in no way transformational and in no way sought to ensure that black people are prioritized and the marginalized are given a chance to breathe following the disastrous effects of the COVID lockdowns and COVID management.
In your own view, sorry to interject, in your own view, what could have been done differently?
Fundamentally, when it comes to finance of the country, the entire neoliberal banking system that we have, the entire neoliberal fiscal policy needs to change. Firstly, as the African Students Union, we're calling for the nationalization of the Reserve Bank and the nationalization of our money supply. Firstly, the economy cannot be built around the creation that banks make money. That is firstly where we're entirely wrong. The structure of the economy does not even allow for economic growth because the Minister of Finance is not investing or is not prioritizing the creation of South African value chains. Investment in this country is at an all-time low. He's not providing us with any confidence at all. Instead, he's telling us the same old story that we're on the right fiscal path. Our debt today is larger than what it was last year, 3.5 trillion rand. In the last 35 years since apartheid, a chunk of that money was stolen during apartheid. The government has failed to find the people who have created this debt for this country and failed to hold them to account. That is the problem we are facing in this country. The problem with debt, the problem with the budget is not a matter of fiscal stretch and fiscal adaptation, but the problem is the government is pursuing a neoliberalist agenda in a society that is based on extraction of resources. In developmental states, in developing countries, the global hegemonic system does not allow developing countries to grow. That is the fiscal approach that is being taken by Tito Mboweni. In no way will any budget speech liberate or transform the South African people unless we change the structural nature of the economy and of the government.
Thank you. Mr. De Beer, let me come to you. Mr. Tito Mboweni today presented a budget for the justice, the judicial system and the justice system. And in his justification, he said that this will help to make sure that the law enforcement will continue to fight corruption. Do you believe that putting enough money or putting money to the judiciary system and the justice system will help to fight corruption?
No. Because they just spent R1 billion on Zondo, no ministers in jail. Hey, Andias. So from my point of view, you can put another R1 billion in. But if you are not taking currently the people that are accused to justice, what's another R1 billion going to help GUGU? So at the moment, the country has enough commissions, it's got enough evidence to start prosecution. So my thing that blows my mind is that someone can sit there for more than 3-4 years, get the names of every person that stole. Now we've got to start,
allegations. These are allegations.
We've got to start understanding.
Unproven allegations.
We cannot get to the point where we are going to take people to court where justice can be taken. Remember, justice in this country is still based on you are not guilty until proven guilty. The problem we've got is how long is the system going to take allegations and make it judgment? That's the first. The second point is, I was kind of following my young comrade here. But the point to where I sat down and said, okay, now there I've got a direct conflict with him. You see, GUGU, when I joined Umkhonto weSizwe, like you know, in 1988 as a cadre, and for the past 30 years, I've been with the system. We decided on a system, us that were more conservative and communist coming out of Russia. So there are certain of us here that have been in the ANC for 32 years. Some of us like me, first a soldier, then a liberation fighter, and then government with Rolihlahla Mandela. So to really start looking at where are we. So I'm the one in the ANC that made a discussion at Nasrec about white minority capital. Very clear. I am the one that made the statement because I'm white. But okay, so coming from a white guy, with respect, it makes it a little bit more understanding when I say clearly there was white minority capital. Okay? The guy that identified that as being true. But what has happened, GUGU, since we've decided that there's an imbalance in this country, myself as a struggle veteran, is to say that we need to rectify this. Now, I'm sorry. I've run 49 businesses, and I have one of the biggest investment companies in Africa overseas. Our problem is not nationalization of reserve banks, nationalization of industry, and definitely not taking land without compensation. Now, I'll teach you a lesson why, being 40 years in this industry. Foreign-based capital by BMW, by Volkswagen, and by other companies investing in our country, when you sit in this thing he calls neoliberal systems, get afraid of us when we start spewing certain rhetoric. I agree with my comrade. We must get balance. But you cannot chase away the freedom of capital expenditure in our country where it's all about rate of return. Then this man must decide that South Africa will shut down its domestic and international trade, and that we've got enough power in this country to spend money without foreign investment. The words he uses, nationalization, that, I'm sorry, although we agree, if you go say that at the European Union, at Russia, in China, and specifically in other countries that invest here, they will withdraw their capital. This is a fact. I know what I'm talking about. I'm the president of a global fund. GUGU, we better start making South Africa first, I agree, but you've got to negotiate.
Let me come back to that. We heard the minister saying today again that over 10 billion will be, allocated so that that would help with the distribution of vaccines in the country in the next coming 2 years, in the delivery of vaccines in the next coming 2 years. Recently, we've heard, and even today, the tabloids were all about irregularities of tender in the health department. Do you think that by any chance we are going to see justice in the department sector, in the health sector rather, when it comes to vaccination, taking into account that we recently also bought a vaccine that was not effective to the variant that was affecting our country? Let me come to you, Mr. Tipier.
I'm an economist. I'm a recognized African economist. I've written 912 articles about the economy. Understand, I can count. Our problem at this moment is not the problem of that we don't have a strong economy. We suffered. But there's a problem that we've got, GUGU. Now, my friend here, who he is, I love the youth. This is my future, so I'm sticking around for him. Our problem at this moment is, what are we leaving for the future? On an economic scale, I want to build my country, GUGU. I want to build and leave a legacy for my kids. What in the fiscal approach of this country are we going to do when we declare hotspots by the president of this country and he reacts nothing to hotspots? What are we going to do? Have you seen one educational program as the African Students Union? Have you seen one educational program at any university by this government rolled out and teaching our people what is the vaccine? I haven't found it, and I speak to 9 universities every single week because I supply a lot of their IT. So I'm wondering, when we speak vaccine, why did our government, and remember, I'm not attacking my government, I'm asking, and we must stop this, that when you ask, you are criticizing. No, I'm not. Have we had a proper Department of Health educational program from here to Port St. John's to Kofi and Baba explaining to our people what is the vaccine? And until you don't do that, people in this country are going to reject the vaccine. They're going to reject that we are serious, and we are going to remain in COVID. This is it. And I'm telling you now, like Zondo, like other commissions, we are currently waiting for the people to be prosecuted. And I agree with the gentleman, allegedly. But I want to go from allegedly to either free or you go to jail. Simple.
Thank you, Mr. Dibia. Let me come to you, Chidi, for your remarks. When we look at the budget that was presented or allocated rather for the justice system, do you think it's effective in ensuring that we fight against corruption and crime in our country?
Before we continue, I think we need to understand, and before I respond to the gentleman, the former cadre of the ANC says, before we respond, I'd like us to understand something about the Zondo Commission. The Zondo Commission of Inquiry was not established to investigate state capture. State capture is not a legal concept. It does not exist. State cannot be captured if all three arms of the state are not captured by any foreign force. South Africa has always been captured. From the beginning of the inception of the Union of South Africa to the day Jan van Riebeeck landed in Southern Africa, South Africa has been captured. That's not a question. The Zondo Commission was established as a political tool to remove Jacob Zuma as president of South Africa. This was the tool that was used this was tested when the Fees Must Fall movement started, over to the Zuma Must Fall movement, where 1 billion rand was invested by white monopoly capital to remove Jacob Zuma. The Zondo Commission is nothing but an ANC factional battle, which is funded by the Ruperts and by the white hegemonic dynasty in this country to ensure that it removes people it views as being radical and as being transformative. Now, responding to the statement that he's a member
Mr.
of
Chidi,
the
sorry
ANC.
to interject. I think that would be a discussion for another day. We're going to sit and have a discussion around the Zondo Commission, which is it's a very interesting that.
But then that's the reality. The reality is that investing in the Zondo Commission is nothing but extending the factional battles within the ANC. So then I don't understand how it does not relate to the topic.
Anything else about the budget speech? Because we're here for the budget.
Remember, you led the conversation to the Justice Department to talk about the Zondo and allegations. Now the reality is those allegations.
Mr. Chidi, can I interject? Let's stick to the question that was asked on the floor. What's your take with regards to the budget that was presented by the finance minister, the budget to make sure that we fight against corruption? Do you think the budget is sufficient? Do you think that it is a viable option to use money to fight against corruption, whereas we need principles, we need policies that will ensure that we fight against corruption?
But then that is exactly the point. You can't put money to fight money being stolen. Effectively, you're fueling the theft of money. So then the government is just not serious about finding the source of corruption. In fact, the suggestion that the government is funding the judiciary is plain and simple a lie. Because the government, in fact, reduced funding from the Public Protector's Office when it was investigating corruption within government. So then if we're talking about funding, we should see results. We have not seen results of investigations into corruption. Corruption has been existent in South Africa for as long as time immemorial. So funding the judiciary to investigate corruption is fueling corruption, in fact. That is the reality. We should be having policies that ensure that we should have a government that is ready to arrest the corrupt, that is ready to put the corrupt on trial with valid evidence, proven evidence, not allegations, not hearsay, not 600 million that flows somewhere in a suitcase and disappears. Because the reality is, if we're looking at corruption from the point of view of the speaker, we're going to be taking $70 statement of 600 million rand, which has been taken as being nonsense and a lie, and you want to investigate that. That's not an investigation. That is the beginning of corruption. Investigating nothing and spending money on that is corruption.
Let's look at some of the budget that was allocated again to the social grants. Do you think that this will mitigate the situation that we are facing in our country, considering that a lot of people have lost their jobs and some households are depending on these social grants? Do you think that perhaps this is helpful in any way?
Unless the social grant is able to ensure that every citizen can buy the national food basket or how much it costs. The food basket in the country costs about 4,500 rand. That is above the minimum wage. It is above any social grant there is. There is no basic grant in the country that allows for a citizen or for any poor person to adequately feed themselves. They adequately survive by electricity, water, and the daily necessities they need. So any income or increase that does not suffice that does not help the people. It puts them more in poverty and more in subjection. That is a reality of the fact that we're facing as a country. Unless you are able to ensure that people are fed, that there is nutritional system, that there's sanitation, that there's electricity and housing, that does a minimal increase in the current grant do. Someone does not have a roof over their head, does not have electricity, and still cannot buy the necessary items he needs to survive.
Let me come to you, Mr. Neil Tipier. Thank you so much, Mr. Chidi, for those remarks. Mr. Tipier, on your last remarks, we saw again today there was an increase of taxes in the alcohol and cigarettes. Do you think that perhaps this will help us in the next coming financial year to recover some funds?
You know, GUGU, they call it sin tax. I mean, if you are looking at the steady increase every single budget speech, which I've now attended over 25 years, I've been there since day one in Parliament. I've seen every budget speech being repeated from Trevor Manuel right through. The point is, sin tax, cigarettes and alcohol will always be boosted. Here's the problem that we've got. And I will now, subject myself to my learned friend at the bottom's years of fiscal experience and global economy. But here's the fact. SA Brewery cut jobs. We are going into, I've now understood from the IMF, I have now been told that this world, listen to this, is going to go into another economic meltdown in June. They're projecting another fiscal crash globally. Now the question is, as now a leader of a political movement that has decided to stand up and make sure that we address the critical issues. I'm saying, currently the budget is taxing cigarettes, it's taxing. We've got to, and I now will say to you, the students and our future is to me more important actually than anything of who I was in the past. My era, we are over. My time is coming at an end. It's about this gentleman. I care about him. What is he going to inherit from people like me that took decisions on behalf of him? And I'll tell him now, we made mistakes. I'm trying to sit here as a person and say, okay, I work with a lot of youth. What do we do? How do I get Wi-Fi, internet into the informal settlements? Give him a laptop. How do we go into Diepsloot, Langa, Nyanga, Kailicha, and Wi-Fi free? We are at an era now where budgets are spent. Can I tell you what I found out just as interesting, Google? In one metro city, their budget is 59 billion a year. Do you know how much they spend on IT? On a 59 billion budget, where without Wi-Fi we can't speak. 100 million rand. What is the problem with us understanding that we can light up our people and give them freedom in the mind? And we don't get more small, medium businesses funded, more entrepreneurs funded. We will always be taxing other people to death, and the people that are on the ground are not going to survive. That's the reality.
Wow. Mr. Tipier, thank you so much for those sentiments. Mr. Chidi, let me come to you in the next 1 minute as we are closing. What are your last remarks with regards to today's speech?
Fundamentally, again, as I say, the Minister of Finance was not speaking to the South African people, or was not speaking to their needs. The budget speech did not cater for the people and does not help us in any way. In fact, we've just learned as a country that we are officially heading on a downward spiral, and there's absolutely nothing the government is ensuring to save us right now. So what we need right now, effectively, is the youth to take up a stance and to ensure that this country is led forward away from the mistakes that were made by the elders 35 years ago and at CODESA, and ensure that effective policies are in place to ensure that the country develops. We are ready and capable to lead, and the government should prioritize that. That should be what should be taking place right now. We cannot have pensioners setting up policies in the 21st century. That does not exist. 21st century should be led by the youth, should be led by students, and that is what we want from the government.
Wow, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this evening. This was a very interesting conversation, and I believe that we will have more time to really look into these issues that are affecting our country, because I believe that the more we talk about them, the more we will find a solution. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Gugu. Looking forward to the next one.
Well, that was Mr. Neil DPL and Mr. Chidi really giving us their insight and their views with regards to today's budget speech that was delivered by the Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni. The gentleman did share very strong sentiments with regards to what our country needs. We thank you for the views that you have been sharing across our social media platforms. We are going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more news and updates across South Africa, Africa, and the rest of the world. Do stay tuned.
Anger boils over in El Dorado Park.
Make massive moves.
Corruption allegations have hit too close to the office of the president.
America is crying out for leadership.
I'm the president and you're fake news.
Donald Trump has already started his attacks.
It is clear from the development of the disease.
It is still the biggest annual decline in 100 years.
Make massive moves with StarSat. Make massive moves.
Oh my God! Oh! Knocked out! And WBC Continental America's champion. That was delightful.
Make massive moves with StarSat. Make massive moves.
Picture perfect, you don't need no filter.
Another one.
Jerusalem, ikayalami.
Make massive moves with StarSat.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is Galaxy Prime. As we continue to give you more news and updates, we are looking into the budget speech. It was not all gloom and doom, because there was some positive light, as the ANC Treasurer General Paul Mashatile says that they will remain vigilant against corruption that is related to the vaccine.
Well, firstly, let me say, as the ANC, we welcome the budget. I think under the circumstances, it's a good budget. And the fact that 10 billion rand has been made available for the rollout of the vaccine, it's a good step ahead, and particularly because these resources will go to provinces and the provincial health departments to be able to do that. We are, of course, going to ensure that we continue to be vigilant against any corrupt activities, so that these resources can benefit the people that they are intended to.
Now, your own health minister, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, also implicated in these kind of serious allegations of corruption. Your view on that?
Well, I saw the story about Dr. Mkhize only this morning in the newspapers. I haven't really heard the side of his story, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that there shouldn't be anything we should worry about on the matter. He should
Given the
explain to us what was
seriousness as the
happening.
top six, would you not be interested in calling him to give his side of the story?
Moving right along with our stories, members of the Trade Union Federation SAFTU were outside Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital this morning as part of their nationwide stay away. SAFTU is supporting the healthcare workers ahead of Minister Tito Mbowene's budget speech. Let's take a look at that. And that was Young Boy, the second deputy president of the Young Nurses Indaba, saying that the current administration has suppressed the voice of the health workers. Moving right along, Fikile Tlotokwela also shared some sentiments from the Young Nurses Indaba.
During this time of COVID, and we need them to be replaced. Remember, even though those ones that died, there were already spaces. Now you can imagine the spaces that are out there in the units and in the wards that the doctors and the nurses have to actually carry on their shoulders. We're demanding for ComServe fully qualified, government-trained nurses are going to be let go. We cannot be having that in this time of retrenchments, in this time whereby workers are under this massacre. We also saying to the Minister of Finance, he needs to look at, if he's going to cut the health budget, he is killing South Africans. There are no systems in place that the government has put to strengthen these facilities. Now, if he's going to cut the health budget, already there is no panado. Now, it means what is going to be left? Already our wards are full. We know that our mother and child units are actually erupting with mothers and babies. Now, when you cut with no other alternative, what are you saying the nurses must do? What are you saying that the doctors must do? We feel that the failure of this government to hold those who are corrupt, who are looting their money, now it is going to cost the lives of many South Africans.
Still on that, right in Cape Town, as this was a countrywide stay away, SAFTU and the police had a clash. The police were refusing to allow the march to go ahead as they were trying to go to Parliament. The situation got tense as the people that were marching and the police really got to an altercation. Let's take a look at how things transpired right there.
Why not? Why not? Why not? Tell me what action you're using. We can't have any of these cars on the road at 7 a.m. And all of these cars are on the road. All these cars are on the road. All these cars are. Then you must tell me all the cars. I'm going to drive through here. What's it? You're not going to Parliament. Why not? Why not? Why not? Why can't I go to Parliament? Why not? People could come together on the beach and go out where so they don't get me here. That's all stuff that they're going to stop. So let's go. Let me just drive through. Why? are you telling us we can't go to Parliament with a car?
The Daily Maverick on Tuesday night reported that the small KwaZulu-Natal communications company called the Digital Vibes was awarded a 82 million rand contract by the Department of Health for the COVID-19 projects. The Special Investigating Unit has received a formal complaint regarding tenders that were awarded by the National Health Department to the company linked to Dr. Minister Zwelim Mkhize's close associates, and will investigate this matter. The SIU told Eyewitness News on Wednesday that the complaint was recently lodged anonymously by someone. With that being said, this is where our installment for Galaxy Prime will end. And thank you so much for joining us. Do further the conversation across our social media platforms. We are Galaxy Universal Network on Facebook. We are GUN_ on Instagram and on Twitter. With that being said, a very good night.
Galaxy Universal Network, inspiring Africa, making global impact.